Thank you all for coming along today. That's done. If you haven't been to Arts Project Australia, this is our street frontage. We're at 24 High Street, Northcote, right next to Baraldo Coffee and not far from the end of Hoddle Street. This is one of our exhibition openings, and we've been in this location for 10 years. We are 40 years old next year though, so we're not a young organisation, and we've developed a lot in that time. We have some fantastic things about our building, but one of the things is it's on a side street, it's not a real walk past, and it's not a highly prominent location. So we have to do a lot of things to attract people to come in and see our exhibitions. Our mission, this is kind of core to everything we do. So all the projects that come out, we have to take back to our mission and say, how does it address it? Our mission is to be a centre of excellence that supports artists with intellectual disabilities. Some of those artists may also have physical disabilities, but intellectual disability is the core. We promote their work and we advocate for their inclusion within contemporary art practice. We support their art, we support them because we have a studio upstairs where artists practice their work and practice art, some full-time, some part-time. We promote their work through our gallery and the activities we do, and we advocate for their inclusion in contemporary art practice. That is our way of saying we would like you to see this art as you would view any other art and not through a lens of disability. We have a really wonderful flexible gallery space downstairs. It's an old shoe factory, and we are blessed with owning this building ourselves and owning it outright. It's highly accessible, although we've just had an accessibility audit done and we've discovered that in 10 years we've become less accessible, so we're working on that. You've got to keep up. We have an Auslan interpreter at each of our exhibition openings, and our building and gallery are all very accessible for people with disabilities. So a quick history. We were established in 1974 as the Arts Project for the Mentally Retarded. You can see that language has moved ahead somewhat in 39 years, by a woman called Myra Hilgendorf. And Myra had a profoundly intellectually disabled daughter, Joanna. Myra was an artist herself, and Joanna created a lot of artworks, and Myra thought there was great merit in these artworks. And she was quite an extraordinary woman. I've never met her. She passed away before I joined the organisation. But she went around and championed the work, particularly the visual artwork of people with intellectual disabilities, gathered a committee of like-minded people around her, banged on lots of doors, worried lots of professors of art and curators at galleries. And in the first 7 years of our existence, it was a purely volunteer organisation that collected artworks, primarily from institutions, because that's where many people were housed, and mounted exhibitions in galleries. And that was the important thing, because up to then the artwork that had been produced in the institutions particularly was not treated with any great respect. It might have been tacked up on the supermarket wall or, hung pretty badly somewhere. I think the first exhibition they had was in the old George's Gallery. And over that time, they mounted 3 exhibitions. We still retain all that artwork. It's a fascinating permanent collection that's been rated having international significance now. Many of the artists' names don't appear on the work for fear of embarrassing their families, as it was back then. Then a lady called Cheryl Day, who was an art teacher at Janefield and on the committee, said, why don't we start our own studio? Because the materials that this work is on, they're pretty crappy, and they're deteriorating, and they're not being given good materials, and people aren't being given a chance to express themselves. So they started that. I think they got funding for 2 hours a week, and over time gradually acquired government funding and support, both federal and state. Took a long time, a long time. This was our most recent exhibition, our gallery. a retrospective of one of the artists who's been working with us for over 20 years, Kathy Staunton. It was called Kathy Staunton's Wondrous Imaginarium, and she's many themes: religious, angels, Luna Park, robots and technology. Very, very different. But today, we've owned our building for 10 years, so we're making it our own. Upstairs is our studio. 110 artists a week come in, not every day. We have about 40 artists each day, working in the studio doing painting, drawing, ceramics, printmaking and digital media. Our public gallery houses 9 exhibitions a year. We really concentrate on getting numerous invitations to exhibit externally, nationally and internationally. And I think what I'm really going to be talking about is more collaboration with mainstream galleries, artists and projects. It's very, very important. The final point really is the key to us developing diversity and diverse audiences. Just another shot of the gallery, in case you haven't been there. Now, diversifying our audiences, I think, is probably a little bit different to most of the other galleries and museums we'll hear about today. When you think we are funded primarily through federal and state disability funding, so we are classified by them as a disability organisation. We call ourselves an arts organisation whose artists happen to have a disability. So it's just a little shift in thinking. So by definition, our core audiences had a lot of diversity. It's been people with both intellectual and physical disabilities, their families, their carers, their friends, their supporters. So in order for us to achieve the third part of our mission, which is to advocate for inclusion within the contemporary arts sector, we really need to connect and attract people who are from outside of those sectors. So whether you call it mainstream, whether you call it people without disabilities, we have quite a culturally and linguistically diverse population within our own population anyway. So over time we've developed a few initiatives, and these 2 particularly have been running lately in the last few years, and they're ones that we've found particularly successful for us, and I think they could translate quite well for most organisations. Our stockroom is a treasure trove. We have, as I said, our permanent collection from our first 7 or 8 years of collecting. We have a permanent collection that's significant works drawn from our own studio over the past 28 years. And believe it or not, it's highly organised. Our artwork is anything that leaves the building to be leased, sold, exhibited, is documented and databased and all that sort of thing. And the way our exhibitions programs, our internal exhibition programs have worked traditionally is that our arts workers, and they are practising artists who work alongside the artists in our studio, have noticed a trend, a theme or something coming out of the studio and put in an exhibition proposal. We've formalised it a bit more in the last 4 years. We like to plan 18 months in advance. So people put in proposals and we have an exhibitions committee that then selects the proposals they feel put together a balanced program and feature a lot of the medium. But this is a great place to have an adventure in. So we thought, let's start inviting in contemporary curators who are not arts workers at Arts Project Australia. That's not to say we don't have our arts workers still curating shows. In fact, some of our gallery staff curate shows as well. But in order to let other people outside of our organisation know about the work that's in our stockroom, we identified 2 external curators each year, and they're invited to come and curate an exhibition. And the intention is really to make broader connections, to bring someone in who doesn't know us or our work necessarily that well, to give them the opportunity to curate that work with work of external artists as well, if they see a particular sort of theme, and to increase the exposure of our artists, obviously, within the contemporary art practice. The exhibition committee identifies and invites the curators the year before. There's not a lot of parameters to this program, which drives me a bit crazy sometimes. But the parameters of the exhibition and the artist and the work are totally up to the curator. The only requirement is that the exhibition is of relevance to Arts Project and that several of our artists are featured. We encourage curators to include external artists because, A, the external artist then becomes, generally, if they're around, becomes involved with Arts Project, likes to see what's happening. The external artist turns up to the opening with their networks, etc., etc. The first, there may have been others before this on an ad hoc basis, but the first was just after I arrived. Professor Colin Rhodes from the Sydney College of the Arts curated Revealing the Human in 2009. Revealing the Human was quite an extraordinary show because it was about the human form, but it was works from supported studios, which is often the name for the studio, the sort of studio we run, from around the world, from the best supported studios. So we had work from the USA, from Denmark, from Germany, from Finland. Colin is probably the leading outsider art expert in Australia and has a lot of contacts. He just emailed and said, can you send me this, can you send me that? All came together. Not only did that bring in quite a diverse range of people to see that show, we held a half-day symposium on the work, which brought another 70 people in for half a day. And they must have a lot of money in Finland because a contingent of artists and their families came out just for the exhibition, and one of the artists worked with our artists all day in the studio, which was really cool because she didn't speak English, but she knew what a paintbrush was and knew how to use it. We get very diverse audiences. It's one of my favourite exhibition shots. Fully booked in 2010. Peter Fay is probably one of Sydney's best-known collectors. He's famous for spotting artists when their artwork's really cheap and buying it, and then their artwork gets really expensive. And Wendy Ford is also a renowned Melbourne collector, and she was on the board of Arts Project. And this was works that they borrowed. It was from their own collections, they borrowed from other collections, and also Arts Project work. And as I said, that's just my favourite photo from that exhibition. So dogs and children are also welcome at Arts Project with open arms. Also in 2010, we invited Lindy Judge to curate Portrait Exchange. And Portrait Exchange was really our first or second kind of go at collaboration with external artists. So a number of our artists were paired with external artists, and the idea was to do a portrait of each other. And that's Jodie Noble, and that's her portrait of her and Lindy. And it was interesting because not all the pairs worked, and some of them had more difficulties than others, but it was actually a fantastic idea. We got more publicity for this show than you can imagine. We're on television, we're on everything. And it brought all the artists then who'd been involved and all their networks. It was a great opening and a terrific show. In 2011, we invited Alex Baker, who was at the National Gallery of Victoria as one of the contemporary curators, to curate a show. Alex came to Australia with a particular interest in outsider art, and one of my board members, who's very proactive, dragged Alex into Arts Project, I'd say about 3 days after he started at NGV, and said, you've got to see this place. So he became a friend fairly quickly and was very interested, and he used to ride over on his bike after work and spend hours in the stockroom. And it's also great for our staff because they get to see how different curators work and what their style is. 2012, Mark Feary, who's the curator at Artspace in Sydney, was invited. Yet again, a very different way of working. This was an exhibition that challenged me. I don't have a visual arts background, so lots of things challenged me, and this one did, but we got a really extraordinary amount of publicity for it. Mark's a very interesting and popular curator, and one of the outcomes of that was that work from this show, created by our artists, then appeared in a show in New York that Mark had curated. So we hope that curators will go away and remember the work and use it somewhere else. In 2012, we also had the great unreveal. Christina Hayes was an arts worker at Arts Project Australia for a number of years, and she and her sisters are a formidable design team called the Sisters Hayes with a multitude of skills, and they came in and actually worked quite collaboratively with a number of our artists to create some really extraordinary work. That was a really fun exhibition. And this year, Jeff Newton, who runs Neon Park and had also been involved in our portrait exchange, was happy to come in and curate Video Doctor, which involved all sorts of elaborate cases and video, which he got in. And the last one for this year was Nocturne, which Kiralee Hammond from Mama Monash University curated for us, and that's Emily Ferretti, one of the external artists. Each one of these shows builds our networks and the people that come to our shows. So they don't just necessarily come for one, they'll come for the next one and the next one because we've engaged their interest. The outcomes are that external curators obviously become more familiar with our work. We do get a lot of interesting publicity angles this way. We love having external artists in our shows. And there's a printed essay. Each curator is engaged to write an essay which we print up for the show, so it gives us a bit of collateral. And each of these shows has had an offshoot project, commission, collaboration, all of which is great for our artists. The second project grew out of, this is our studio, or part of it. It's very big. If any of you'd like to come visit one day, please let me know. Happy to show people around. Our artists work in the studio, and we really do encourage the sort of collaboration that I've been talking about, but often it's nothing more than having a chat. And our gallery manager and curator, Sim Luton, developed this idea last year, and we went into knowing me, knowing you, and yes, you can go aha at the end of it if you like. Portrait Exchange was a great project, but it often only engaged people once or twice. They didn't necessarily, they might have taken pictures and gone away and done portraits. What we wanted was some real meaningful collaboration and exchange. So we also want to continue to break down barriers between artists with disabilities and without disabilities, because we're all really not that different, and there are ways of working with everyone, and we firmly believe that at Arts Project. That's why we're all there, so the more we can spread that word. So this was the next step, if you like. We were fortunate to receive Arts Victoria funding for this project, so every artist is being paid an artist fee, including our artists, which is what we advocate for always. The key components are that 10 Arts Project artists are paired with 10 external artists. There's a 12-month collaboration, but there's no rules. So, they can come up with what they want. They received money for materials. They received artist fees. We are documenting the project through film. I hoped to have a little teaser for you today, but it just arrived in my mailbox this morning and I couldn't figure out how to download it. So keep an eye on our website. We'll be starting to feed more of that out, but that will be made into a short documentary on the process. There's been a lot of interviews and footage taken. And this is going to culminate in our first exhibition in 2014, which also happens to be our 40th anniversary year. So I think it's a very fitting way to open the year. It's not about external artists just coming to our studio and working with the artists. It's about our artists going to their studios and working. It's about meeting somewhere to get some inspiration. And over 12 months, I've watched these 10 pairs go off in just amazing journeys. Some are finished, some are still, going, but there's going to be one of the most diverse and interesting exhibitions we have next year, so I do hope you'll be able to come along. I think all the artists involved, there's one pair that's probably not working so well, I'll be frank, but then people are people and not everyone works well together, so we've done our best and that will be documented anyway. So a couple of the pairs are Catherine Bell. She's an artist herself and also a lecturer at the Australian Catholic University, working with Kathy Staunton. And that's actually the work that they did for Portrait Exchange. So they'd had previous connection, Catherine and Kathy. And Catherine Bell actually was the opening speaker at Kathy's retrospective recently, which was great. And it was probably one of the best opening speeches I've ever heard because she actually had a real relationship and connection with Kathy. Martin King from Print Workshop is working with Kate Knight, and they've got a wonderful working relationship that's going really well. Nathan Gray is working with Chris Mason. They have not worked on an arts project collaboration before. Chris is a fairly independent fellow, and he and Nathan have had a friendship, but they're actually really engaging. I believe they're making a baby, but I'm not quite sure where it's going to end up. And Andrew Cavalieri and Fiona Taylor have all but finished their project now, and they've just had a fantastic time working together. It means that these external artists are coming to visit us more often. They're in and out, they're on the phone, and I think it's going to be a very joyous and happy occasion. All of these things mean that we are engaging meaningfully with people and creating new networks and relationships that extend beyond us. Since Knowing Me, Knowing You started, we've had requests from other visual arts organisations for similar collaborations. We don't have any funding for them, so we're trying to facilitate them as we can. The approach has been made not from us, but from external artists and external organisations, and that's, I think, really, really key. Those are my two things, so I thank you very much and happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you. Oh, sorry, yes, let me hit the microphone.
In addition to state and federal grants, do you have any fundraising, internal sort of ways of...
That's half my job.
Well, I was just going to say, it's very time-consuming, and would you like to tell us a little about it?
Oh, you know, I spent 4 years at Australia Business Arts Foundation running programs to teach arts organisations how to raise money, and I had come from running my own charitable foundation in a corporate sense and giving money out from a corporate before that. And after the first 12 months at Arts Project were really hard. I thought, I'm a total failure. I don't know what I've been telling people for the last 4 years, but it's just not working. And all of a sudden it started to work. The key thing is to always have notions of projects and things that you would like to get funded. If somebody did walk through that door with $50,000, you could immediately tell them what you could spend it on. We have private donor mail-outs that go out to individuals twice a year. I write an inordinate amount of trust and foundation grants, and as we all know, those are really difficult unless it's new, which I'm arguing with philanthropy about in general. If you funded the pilot of something that is really successful, why wouldn't you continue to give it some funding instead of letting it fall over? And we have been moderately successful at getting arts funding, sadly not recently, through Arts Victoria, but we're starting to be recognised more in that vein. But I would say writing sponsorship and funding applications and things is easily 25% of my job. But see, I'm not an artist. I've got a lot of artists working for me doing that artistic work, so there you are.
Hi, I was just wondering about the external curator program. You guys have got a very particular vision and way that you look at the works and work with your artists. Has there ever been any conflict or do you have a very strict process of how you choose the external curators to make sure that they match your vision, or has that ever come up as an issue?
No, it hasn't. I guess because we don't give, as I said, the parameters are so broad. We just say you need to use some work from our artists, and we have a stockroom. You know, there's something for everyone in there. Believe me. And no, we haven't actually had that at any. I haven't come across too many people who, in fact, I haven't come across anyone who have, once they have visited Arts Project, doesn't completely embrace what we're doing and the, I guess, the empowerment and joy that the work that we do brings. Yeah.
Just briefly, with 100 studio artists, you must be about reaching capacity.
Yeah, we're full.
Yeah. So how does that work, and how do you deal with that in terms of your own, I guess, your own internal stakeholders?
Well, look, what we tend to have about, I worked this out a little while ago, we've got about 30% of art. We've got some artists who've been with us almost since the studio began 25 years ago. And they're our most established artists with quite a long body of work. For a number of younger ones who come in, it's about 30% across the age groups. We are looking for ways to make more spaces. To make more spaces, we have got a little bit of room, but to make more spaces, I have to employ more staff, and there's always juggling that balance. So we look at ways of doing that, but at this stage, we've kind of gone, okay, we're full, and as a place becomes available, and they do sometimes, we have a very low attrition rate. People are more likely to come for one day and then say, can I come 2 days next year or 3 days next year? So we try and accommodate where we can. We often get asked about whether we're going to replicate this model. My board's decided at this stage not to. After our 40th birthday, they might revisit that. I don't know.
How do you choose who's able to come if you only have 100? How do you choose who can come?
Well, one of my board members was very surprised last year to discover we didn't have a sort of audition process because we have so many great artists, and it kind of goes back to when the studio first started, most people had been given no empowerment. You know, one of the original arts workers said, we spent 5 years helping them get their personalities back because they were so institutionalised. It's not like that now. Young artists come in and they've been to school and they know how to use a computer and they know what they want and they've made choices. So the only criteria we have are, do you really want to come and make art? Not, does mum want you to come and do this or someone else? Do you really want to do it? Can you manage in a studio with 40 people in it? It's a big room, but some people can't actually function in that kind of space. And do we have a place? So that's the key one, is, do we have the place? So we always have a little waiting list. And we're moving into interesting times with disability because it's very competitive. For between services. We are lucky, we're boutique, all we do is art, whereas most other programs that are day programs might do, you know, an hour of art in the morning and cooking in the afternoon and something else and something else. So it's more of a rounded thing. People come to us because they really want to focus on art, and so we tend to attract the right people, and they get a trial, and if it doesn't work then they go somewhere else. I'm not there.
I'm just wondering how you acquire the works that you have. Are they purchased from the artists?
The artists own all their own work. The artists receive 60% of every sale, 100% of every reproduction fee. We act as a commercial gallery for them. We have an artist agency agreement in place with them. If an artist leaves, they can take their work with them. They can donate it to us if they wish, or we can continue to promote and sell it on their behalf, in which case it would go. We've had some artists pass away, we've then made arrangements with their families. But unlike quite a number of other supported studios around the world and in Australia, our artists own their own work totally.
Continue asking questions afterwards.
And if anyone would like to come and have a tour, let me know. Thank you.